Thank you. I am pleased to see so many of you out. I didn't expect it to be this cold in Washington when I came back from New Orleans. It's cold in New Orleans, but maybe I'm just getting old. I was thinking about other occasion speeches that I have heard in places as I've gone around the country speaking in the past. The usual one takes about an hour of people talking. They say they're going to talk 10 minutes, they talk for an hour, and then whatever, and you go on. And I was also thinking about Andy Young, who I saw on TV, some interview he was doing the other day. And Andy used to tell me when we were in the Carter administration that I should never give a talk without writing down everything I was going to say. Because he said, you're like me, you'll just say any old thing that comes into your mind. And then he told me after that, about 10 years later, don't write down anything you say, because what you say when you just say what comes out of your mouth is good. So just say it. So I don't know. So I brought a piece of paper, but I don't know if I'm going to use it or not. I know that running to the fight was really what we talked about at ASALH last year at Luncheon, and running to the fight again, which some of us thought we weren't going to have to run to the fight again, but we have to. And what is it? What are we fighting? And what strategies that we need to use? I guess that labor, which is the big emphasis here also. The main thing that I always remember that is that for most of our history, our labor was uncompensated. We ought to keep that in mind. For most of our history, it was uncompensated. And then only in part of our history has it been compensated, but not fully in the way that it should be. But I last year wrote a book which I published, and some people were nice enough to get it today here, about the hundreds of thousands of black children who were enslaved after the 13th Amendment ended slavery. They were enslaved anyway. And they were children who were taken by the planters who wanted cheap labor and who went down to their buddies in the courts and said, these children aren't taken care of by their families. The families can't afford to, so we'll just take them and teach them a trade. And when I read the indentures to see what trade they were going to teach them, they were going to teach them how to pick cotton. They were going to teach them how to dig ditches properly. They were going to teach them how to do all these things. It was just a bunch of devious behavior. And I discovered that most of us didn't know anything about the history of these children. Although my colleague at Penn says it is the precursor of the bad foster care system. There are good foster care systems, but the bad ones. In any case, so when I wrote the book, I thought we were going to have reparations soon. And I thought this was another aspect to put in about reparations. And I traced the history of these children all the way up to the late 20th century, their descendants and so on, to see what happened to them. But now I guess I've decided that I was wrong, and we're not going to get reparations this year. I hate to tell you that, and I hate to be the skunk at the picnic, but hey, that's the way it goes. Now we're confronted with something else. Last year, I spent a lot of time talking to Kim Crenshaw and other people about intersectionality and DEI and all these different things that we were working on, book banning, trying to save the books and the courses and all the rest of it. This year, we've got another ominous problem to add to that one. People being fired from their jobs, some of them a month after they got a sterling review saying how great they were at whatever it was they were doing. And then they get in the dark of night, not just here in D.C., but in New Orleans, where I'm spending some time. A whole bunch of federal employees were fired the other day, sent those emails at night, don't come in the morning. We don't need you anymore because you're not any good. And what do we have? I have from nonprofits notes about how they're running out of money to feed people and how they need more to put on top of the people who are already poor. So we have, on top of all of those arguments about DEI, and we see that the chief of staff, the general, was fired yesterday, the first black. The first black anything is going to get fired. I'll tell you that right now. So if you're the first black anything, get ready to get fired, okay? So think about what you're going to do. And so we have to think about what does it mean to work on these issues now. A. Philip Randolph, and you talk about labor. In History Teaches Us to Resist, that I wrote the book before this book, I have a whole chapter on how the Brotherhood, free sleeping car porters, and what Randolph and the rest of them did was a model for what we can do in order to make resistance work. And it has been used many times. The women, the thing that I lift up in that book is the women of the Brotherhood who are ignored, the wives, the mothers, all of whom organized the people to come. Melinda Shadavera wrote a book about it called Marching Together. And they persuaded Eleanor Roosevelt that there was going to be a real march and real people were coming. And they had housing for them. They even gave them addresses where the people were going to stay here in D.C. and all the rest of it. And that's when Eleanor told Franklin that it was real. It wasn't just something that black people were making up, and we got the executive order. So federal employment has been absolutely crucial to what we do as a people and lifting people up to the middle class and above. And now we're back trying to figure out what to do. Some people say rely on the courts. When I talk to my friends who are in politics still, they say the courts will take care of it. They will order these people to stop doing these crazy things. Well, I'm not going to rely just on the courts. And besides, the courts take time. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Other people say, wait till 2 years, we're going to have an election. So then y'all just put up with it for 2 years and tell people to go vote, and then, we'll take over again and we'll take care of it. I'm not sure that 2 years is too long, that's the first thing, for people whose houses are getting foreclosed, they can't pay the rent in the streets, don't have a job, and all those things. That's just ridiculous, and the people that we have to feed and take care of. So that's too long. But I don't have anything against voting. Voting is fine. As MLK used to say, and said it in the Where Do We Go From Here, that you needed the vote, that was good, but that you needed nonviolent civil disobedience, and that is the story of our history, if we remember anything that has been successful for us. So all I have to say is that litigation, yes, also worrying about voting and candidates and all that kind of stuff. Although sometimes, even when you vote, the people don't do what you think they're going to do. So you got to think, factor that in. And the third thing is to resistance, which is rising. It is getting Amos Brown, pastor out in Oakland, who's referred to as Kamala's pastor. He was in the civil rights movement with us. That he told me the other night that, in fact, the resistance is rising there. It's rising everywhere where people are being fired from their jobs. So we need to keep all of that in mind. The word for me is that we should do all of those things. Everything that comes to hand is what we should use. But we should remember chapter 29, Jeremiah, that Amos and I talked about the other night, that when you are on the verge of going into the captivity, which is what that chapter is about, you have to think about how you're going to preserve your people and your families and everybody so that when you are able to rise up again, you will be strong and you won't be decimated. And what he talks about in Jeremiah, you ought to read it if you haven't read it sometime, is how you families have to stay together. People have to come close. Your people, be close. Help each other. Take care of each other. Don't backbite. Be involved with each other. And try to make each other strong so you can come through it all at the end. And that at the end you will come through it. And that's not because hope pays off immediately, but it does pay off in the end. And so as we, and I believe that each generation has to make its own dent in the wall of injustice. And so this generation, I'm pleased to see, is still moving now to try to do something now about the problems, or as soon as they can, and is willing to make sacrifices in order to do it. And as we do this, let's keep in mind that it is true that God didn't bring us this far to leave us, and hope will pay off in the end. So let's keep on with the fight, running to the fight, but make sure we have strategies so that when we run to the fight, we don't just run to the fight and get knocked down. Or have, what was that, Musk calls it a wood chipper, to, you know, that thing he was showing, to knock us down and pull us over, or to make division in our community. So let us keep on doing that, and let us hear this program where we will find ideas and questions from you that will help us to strengthen us as we go forward. Thank you very much.